Crinolines. Fashion history's greatest blunder. Excessive. Frivolous. Dangerous. The greatest difficulty for a woman and those around her. Or was it? Anyone who knows anything about historical fashion has undoubtedly heard the word crinoline uttered before, frequently followed by garishly comic images of a fashionable woman consuming the entire room with the width of her unimaginably huge skirt. Her very presence an unsurmountable barricade of those around her, a creature of steel and whalebone, the greatest torment to the Victorian gentlemen, for they could not stand so close to their female counterparts, for those dreadful steel contraptions keep them at such a stultifying distance. Could you imagine a contraption not only frees a woman from a weight of quarter petticoats, but also provides her personal space? Indeed, terrible as they might have been to the poor Victorian gentleman who, by the mid-1850s, might have found the women in his company adopting this dreaded crinoline. The crinoline, hoop skirt, skeleton skirt, steel jupon, or steel slip was a remarkable invention that many epitomizes the Industrial Revolution, a clue given by its many namesakes. The crinoline was underskirt or petticoat, which featured broad rows of steel hoops to hold it out into that dramatic bell shape, which the very thought of Victorian fashion conjures so well. They were once a feature of almost any woman's wardrobe. Never to leave the house without one, and never to know a moment of peace, so long as a man had an opinion on them. They are a liberating joy to one half the population, and a burdensome horror to the other. And I want one. The crinoline, or hoop skirt, was believed to have first been patented in the April of 1856 in Paris by Narcisse Millet, introduced into Britain a few months later. It would very quickly become immensely popular across the Western world, adopted by almost every social class and every age. In an age of rapid industrialization, the crinoline would be quickly mass-produced, fueling this insatiable demand, with factories churning out tens and thousands of crinolines a year. In Diana de Marley's autobiography on the couturier, Charles Frederick Ware, she noted that by 1858, there were steel factories that catered solely to the production of crinolines. One of the most significant manufacturers of the crinoline during the mid-19th century was Thompson & Co., founded by an American with branches across Europe and the United States, who, at the height of their success, could produce up to 4,000 crinolines in their London factory a day. In the company's New York factory, at its peak, they employed 1,000 workers and would get through 300,000 yards of steel wire each week to produce 3,000 or 4,000 crinolines a day. Alternatively to the steel-hooped crinoline, whalebone, or even inflatable rubber crinoline were available. The latter, however, was a short-lived novelty, due mostly to the rubber's unpleasant smell and its propensity to be punctured, and even collapse. In spite of the dangers which many decried, from snapped points of sharp steels to collapsing crinolines, the crinoline was an undoubted revolution in the world of women's fashion. In previous decades, corded petticoats or horsehair petticoats were the most popular, weighty and requiring numerous layers of petticoats. As the trends for skirts saw them getting ever larger, crinolines were, for many, a much-needed relief. Liberating and simple in their wearability, and able to shed those burdensome layers of superfluous petticoats. Many museum collections have surviving crinolines on display, from the Metropolitan Museum of Art to the Victoria and Albert Museum. Steel hoops to whalebone, cotton and net, sateen and case steel. The many examples of surviving crinolines demonstrate the variety of options that are available to the crinoline-conscious consumer of the mid-19th century. Not only this, but they also demonstrate how crinolines could vary in size too. Though when one thinks of a crinoline, they may imagine a crinoline of comedic proportions, broad enough to consume an entire room, and indestructible enough to ensure no possible way past. The reality was that most crinolines were more reasonably sized, even those for the more fashionably inclined. The historian Max von Bohem claimed that the largest crinolines could measure up to 10 yards or 30 feet in diameter. However, the photo historian Alison Gersheim would later correct this by stating that the naturalistic maximum diameter was between 5.5 to 6 yards or 16.5 to 18 feet. This was an age of exuberant industry, technology, and a great leap into revolutionary mass production. Skilled artisanal labour was being phased out, whether willingly or not, in favour of things that are cheap, fast, and in great supply for the masses. So, dear viewer, why don't you join me in stepping deeper into the world of 19th century crinolines? And if you would like, have a go at making one yourself. Crinolines, in their broad variety, were an all-consuming essential for any woman of the mid-19th century. The incredible array of crinolines saw many types available from the industrial market, such as cage-style crinolines, with hoops suspended from vertical cotton tapes, or solid crinoline skirts of cotton, with hoops sewn against a petticoat. In my own efforts, I decided to go for the second variation. I feel that in some cases, a little simplicity can be useful when trying something for the first time. In making my crinoline, I first began with white polycotton fabric. I then proceeded to cut this fabric into 5 panels, each of these panels being 19 by 35 inches. I then began to sew, and sew, and sew, and sew. Eventually, I managed to sew all 5 panels together, sewing them from the side seams to make one large piece of fabric. However, thanks to the power of editing, you can't see the fact that my sewing machine was actually broken the whole time, and the thread kept being spat out every 5 minutes, which made the process a lot harder and a lot longer than it should have been. After this, I got to the all-important step of sewing the hoop channels to the crinoline. For this process, I used twill tape and sewed it to the underside. At last, after several hoop channels, a whole lot of sewing, and a couple of pieces of boning, I finally got around to hemming either side of the crinoline. I inserted the boning into the boning channels, I sewed the cinder back seam, and then I gathered the crinoline to the waist tape. And so, without further ado, I guess it's time to show you the finished product. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching.